All right, welcome. I'm very excited about today. I am starting a series called Origin Stories that I'm going to be revisiting books that I remember reading as a kid and kind of trying to remember what they were, first of all, and then also looking back at them and seeing how they stand up today. And the first one I'm doing is The Unicorns of Balinor by Mary Stanton. Mary Stanton also wrote some adult novels. I believe they were in like the thriller or mystery section, but she wrote 8 books for the Unicorns of Balinor as well under Scholastic. And they came out from 98 to 2000. So I was 5 to 7 years old when these came out, and they're the first chapter books I remember reading along with Junie B. Jones. So those are like some of my first book memories is with these books. So I was very excited to go back to them. I read them on Kindle. I was able to get them in like a bundle for like $8 from Amazon as ebooks because they have been out of print for a long time. So finding the whole series in print was really hard. The library didn't have them at all. And then trying to find all 8 of them together, it was going to take a few weeks to get them off of eBay, and people were having them at like $30 and $40. So I got the ebook versions instead. I prefer physical, but we did it this way, and it was just fun. So I'll start with what I remember about this series. All I can remember as a kid was a girl and a horse/unicorn, because he was injured, named Sunchaser. And that they went through this, it was like a portal fantasy, and they had to go into magical trials and kind of save the world that they had gone into. And then the other thing I remember very clearly was a purple unicorn named Atalanta, and she looked into the dream pool and could see down from the celestial unicorn's place. And that's about it. 8 books, and that is all I could remember after, gosh, I'm 33 now, so almost 30 years. Almost 30 years since I've read these. We'll talk about from book to book, kind of an overview of the summaries. They ended up being a little more wild than I remember. And spoiler, they're middle grade books, so you can't expect like high fantasy levels of writing, but they're still a little questionable for what goes on in these stories. We'll start with book 1. So book 1 is called Sunchaser's Quest, and you start out in Glacier River Valley is where they are, and Ari wakes up in the hospital and she doesn't know who she is, and her legs are broken pretty severely. She knows she has a horse named Sunchaser. He has a wound on his forelock area, and she just knows that she was in a horrific riding accident, and that's it. And then you also see perspectives from Atalanta, the dream unicorn, as I was saying, and she's up in the Celestial Valley watching Ari and Sunchaser, and she's just worrying about their health and them getting their memories back. But so far, you don't know who they are at all. At some point, it takes a few months. We kind of like gloss over those few months. And Ari is working on getting better. She's going through physical therapy to help her legs. She's starting to ride Chase at this point, but she can't ride him like very much at all. It's got to be very short terms. And then Anne and Frank are the couple that are helping Ari to recover, and they are listed as her foster parents. They own the farm, and it's a lot of money, and then the medical bills for Ari were a lot of money. Of course, in a fantasy, we still have medical bills. It hurts. But anyway, so they're getting behind on money, and they need to start leasing Chase out to other riders to get some money for the farm to keep operating and keep Ari safe. Ari's not happy about this at all. She feels an incredible bond to Chase, and she's like, we're seriously going to let somebody ride my horse. But she also feels very indebted to Frank and Anne, so she's gonna try. And this all introduces the Carmichaels. They're the rich, bratty people. Lori Carmichael is the same age as Ari. Oh, by the way, Ari's like 12 years old, and so is Lori. And her father, Mr. Carmichael. Lori's a brat, as I said. And the first time she even tries to come and ride Chase, she tries whipping him and kind of handling him really roughly because she wants what she wants and she's not going to listen to the horse at all. She's going to just do what she wants to have happen. And Ari steps in and is like, what is this that's happening? And Mr. Carmichael already sees that Ari's going to be a problem with Chase and Lori. So he tries to intervene, and he wants a different trainer for Chase. He doesn't want Ari, the 12-year-old girl, to be training Chase anymore, which valid, but also that's how they're trying to get a new trainer in. Ari is really trying to come to terms with this because that means she's going to see even less time with Chase. The day that they bring the new trainer, they're actually bringing a trailer too, and Mr. Carmichael's like, we're going to take your horse and we're going to lease him and put him somewhere else so he can be far away from Ari. And Ari loses it at this point. Not happy at all. And she has an amulet that she came through the gap with, and the vet on the farm is called Dr. Bones with an H, Bohnes. She tries to leave the amulet for Dr. Bones to sell and hopefully get money for Anne and Frank because she knows this isn't going to end well. And when the latest situation happens with the new trainer coming through, Ari takes Chase and guns it towards the cave system that she was found in where her accident happened. And Lori ends up chasing with her. Oh, I forgot too. There's also a dog named Lincoln. He's a border collie. He's just follows Ari around everywhere. He runs off with Chase as well. Or he tries to. That's right. He tries to run off, and Ari just tells him, we'll meet up with you later, because Lori grabs him and doesn't let Link go. But then when Ari runs off with Chase, Lori gets another horse and runs, and they get Lincoln through there too. And they end up going through what ends up being called the gap and spat out on the other side. And that's very much how book 1 ends. It's very short. All of these books are 95 to 110 pages, by the way. Very short. Very, very short. Oh, that's right. Sorry, I said the first book was called Sunchaser's Quest. That's The Road to Balinor is the first book. Sunchaser's Quest is book 2. So we move on to there, and Ari and Chase, and we begin with Atalanta bringing another horse, a white and black horse named Tobiano, or horse. Now I'm stuck on saying horse since the first book was all horses. Unicorn. Tobiano is black and white, and Atalanta brings him down from Celestial Valley to help Ari and Balinor. Atalanta knows that Ari's crossed over the gap again. Ari and Lori have no idea where they are, and Ari poses as Lori's maid because Lori, of course, needs to pretend to be a high lady. They get to the Unicorn Inn, which is owned by a man named Samlet, and he's throughout the whole series. They realize that this world is very different. There's no technology, etc. The animals in Balinor are losing their speech because they keep hearing the Sunchaser, Lord of Animals, hasn't been there. And without his connection to the land, the animals are all losing their speech, so they can't talk to the unicorns anymore that live there. Then there's Lady Kylie, who ends up at the inn as well, and we end up knowing that she turned against the royal family, and she recognizes Ari, which is the first clue that Ari is not who she thought she was. And Kylie tries to take her to Entia, but Atalanta protects her in the stables at the Unicorn Inn. In one of the stalls. Lady Kylie runs off, seemingly can't find Ari, and Atalanta tells Ari she's the princess, and suddenly Ari remembers a little bit, some things. She just remembers, oh yeah, I'm the princess, which is super unrealistic with short-term memory loss like that and a trauma memory loss like that. She also mentions throughout the book that she is not used to people bowing to her, even though she lived as a princess for 13 years and has some of her memories back. So then Dr. Bones appears in Balinor, and Ari's like, who? What? Okay. Dr. Bones ended up having been her nanny this whole time. Her nurse is what they call her. And Anne and Frank, who were the owners of Glacier River Farm, were also part of Balinor and were part of the resistance to Entia, the evil being that helped get Ari over the gap the first time. It just hurt her terribly to do that. Dr. Bones comes back with the amulet that Ari tried to make her sell, and it ends up being the base of Chase's horn. All of the celestial unicorns have a gem at the base of their horns. And Atalanta sends them off to find a jewelwright to fix the horn. So there's also been pieces of things that Ari has been finding, and she's like, what are these? And they look kind of spirals, like little shells, and she's found 3 of the 4 pieces of Chase's horn. So they go off to find the jewelwright, and they go through a bog and meet Tomlet, who is a cousin or a brother to Samlet, something like that. But he ends up being an agent of Entia, the shifter. And crows chase them through the bog until Tobiano gets stuck in the mud. And it was very much a vision of Artax in the Neverending Story, sinking into the quicksand. That was what's happening to Tobiano, and he goes fully under until Ari is able to grab his reins and kind of pull him out with the help of everybody else. Oh, and I have never watched Neverending Story all the way through again since seeing Artax submerge. So, I hate that scene so much. But Toby's fine now. And the group ends up finding the jewelwright. We never seen Tomlet again, by the way. Never again. He was just there for 2 seconds. And the jewelwright, he magics some of the horn back together. And he's like, okay, when you're ready to get the final piece in, it'll all work. And then the story just kind of skips to Ari and Chase sneaking out at night to go to the nearby castle, the royal family's castle, that's near the jewelwright's place, and retrieve the last piece of his horn. It is in the castle where the battle before they crossed the gap happened. The whole planning session for this mission is skipped, and it's just briefly mentioned as Ari and Chase leave the paddock. It's just like, yeah, we had a planning session. We're going into the castle. And I'm like, okay, let's go, I guess. And Ari also mentions here that the castle seems small to her now, since the world she's seen the last 6 months is so big. 'Cause with her memory loss and her not knowing who she is, and she had only been at the farm for these last months. And then just remembering being a kid in this castle. Now as a princess, she didn't get to leave the castle very often. So now she's seen so much more of the world than she's ever seen. And the castle seems small to her. They take the castle, storm the castle. There's a kraken in the moat. Pretty epic. But it doesn't really do anything in this battle. But here's the thing. Anytime there's any sort of violence that would happen, it kind of summarizes it for you. So you don't get a play-by-play very often in this, because it is middle grade. So it doesn't seem like the kraken really does anything for the protection of the castle. And they're able to retrieve the last piece of the horn and put it together with the jewel and place it on Chase's head. And now the Sunchaser is back. His coat brightens up and all of the colors, because he's more of like a bronze colorer, I believe. And that is supposed to help the animals in Balinor regain their speech powers. And that's where we end book 2. Book 3 is called Valley of Fear. Now, we're starting again with Atalanta sending them on a new quest. Seems like very formulaic. We start with needing to go... Well, the first book, we don't really know what's going on. But from here out, pretty much the beginning of every book is going to be starting with a quest giver giving them a task to do and them having to go fulfill it. Pretty standard hero's journey kind of stuff. Atalanta sends them on a new quest for book 3, Valley of Fear. It's to find the royal scepter that Ari had just gotten with her bond and Sunchaser as the princess before Entia took over the kingdom. And the scepter is supposed to help her get the rest of her memories back and fully remember everything that she went through as a kid. Atalanta also gives Ari at this time a bottle full of starlight, a star bottle, I think they call it. And it's basically, the scene just reminded me of Galadriel giving the starlight to Frodo. So it was very reminiscent. And Entia, he's a shadow. He's got his shadows all over the place in the first few books, and there's that eye that follows you around, which I forgot to mention, which is very the eye of Sauron kind of thing. And then there's this star bottle with Galadriel, and it's just, there's a lot of little things that I trace back to LOTR throughout this series. Anyway, so we get those things. We're going out on a new quest. Chase and Ari find some of the animals in the forest who tell them that other animals have started hunting, and that is against the law in Balinor. They're all supposed to be vegans, vegetarians, and not hunt each other, and no one's supposed to kill anyone for food. So Chase and Ari go to an animal council to hear more about what's happening, and they also meet the old mare of the mountain. She's the oldest unicorn that anybody knows about, and the old mare gives them a prophecy about what Ari needs to do to get the scepter. They then take the whole group, Ari, Chase, Lincoln, Tobiano, and Laurie Carmichael, who is just a brat the whole time. They get on a boat to the Valley of Fear. The boat is called the John Treader. Yes. And the celestial unicorns come down to distract Entia while they go into that. So Atalanta's watching from above and starts bringing the celestial unicorns down on a rainbow to the Valley of Fear so that Entia has to come out and defend against them, while Ari and crew sneak into the Valley of Fear. And they disguise themselves as soldiers to enter the palace, which all of this, the disguising as soldiers happens in Wizard of Oz, but it also happens in Lord of the Rings. And the whole thing with Atalanta coming down just feels like when Aragorn comes out and distracts the Eye of Sauron so they can take the ring. Anyway, I love Lord of the Rings. Anyway, Laurie had been off while the whole Council of Animals happened, making friends with Lady Kylie. And somehow she doesn't know that Lady Kylie is bad. She just kind of like missed the whole thing where Lady Kylie tried to take Ari earlier. So she thinks that Lady Kylie told her a good place to hide that's like a cave area by the castle so they can get in. And Lady Kylie ends up coming out and turning into a snake and attacking them, which also felt very much like Shelob. It felt very much like when you go into Shelob's cave, and especially with Laurie kind of guiding them to there, but she didn't do it as nefariously maybe as Gollum did. So they get attacked by Lady Kylie, and Ari saves Laurie from Snake Kylie with the star bottle. And during the scuffle, Laurie, Ari, and Chase fall into what's called the pit in the Valley of Fear. And they fall down with the scepter somehow, because Lady Kylie just had it. Entia wasn't hiding it. He just gave it to the person that betrayed the king and queen previously, and she's just walking around with it. But anyways, Laurie, Ari, and Chase fall back down through the pit, and they end up back at Glacier River Farm. This book, it's really clear how flat the characters are for this. I mean, it is middle grade, but we have characters that just kind of do things for the sake of plot, and Laurie is probably the strongest character, but only because she's like a caricature brat, and it just stands out. And Ari, I couldn't tell you anything about Ari except that she's a princess. Like, I can't tell you much about her personality. She just does things to suit the plot, and finish it. So it just became really clear at this point, and especially since most of these books are focused on plot action and not really emotional and intimate moments. Book 4 is By Fire by Moonlight. We start this one off with Atalanta and the Celestial Unicorns being cut off. Atalanta's watching pool becomes like infected, kind of, and she's not able to see into Balinor after Ari goes through, because it's told to her. It's told to Atalanta that the old magic the deep magic is out of balance because of the scepter. So Ari going back into the human world, the plain no magical world with the scepter, threw everything out of balance. And so Atalanta can't help her. So Ari and Chase try to go back through the gap to Balinor again, leaving Laurie at the farm, because Laurie had been complaining for the first 2 books about going home, or for the last 2 books about going home. And now she's home, and she's sitting there saying, well, if you don't come and tell my dad what happened to me, then I'm going to be in very big trouble. And this is like this is part of why Laurie is probably the most developed character. She actually has some backstory that reflects on her character. And she is afraid to go and face her father alone because she thinks 2 weeks have passed. They've been gone for that long. When Ari and Chase try to go through the gap, the way is closed, and they end up fighting Snake Kylie again. She's just there. Don't know how. I guess she fell through the pit with them. But Kylie issues the Shifters challenges, which are By Fire and Moonlight. They're these challenges that the Shifter can ask of Ari now that she has the scepter as the princess. Which this is our moment of getting to go on a quest again. This time it's Kylie as the quest giver. Ari gets the scepter speaks, tells her how to open the gap to another realm, since the way to Balinor is closed. So there's more realms than just Balinor connected to the gap. The scepter at this time only answers questions. It doesn't just answer things willy-nilly. You have to ask it direct questions. Lincoln had been waiting at the pit for a few days, trying to wait to see if Ari and Chase come back. And he is brought by Tobiano to see Atalanta. And he tells her what happened fully, and that he saw Moloth, the Shadow Rider. Moloth is the shadow unicorn, the big shadow unicorn with wings. And then there's the Shadow Rider that rides him. Very Nazgul. Very, very Nazgul. And they lead a whole contingent of winged shadow unicorns from Entia's castle. And so Lincoln tells Atalanta he sees them on the move. Ari and Chase pass a bunch of doors in the gap and end up somehow back in the pit, in the Valley of Fear. I always thought that the Valley of Fear was part of Balinor, but apparently they're separate worlds. It doesn't make sense to me how it was closed, supposedly, but then I don't know. There's some mechanics here that don't exactly line up with how these worlds work. Laurie, of course, followed them back because she doesn't want to get in trouble with her father, her mean father, who gives her so much money and gives her everything she wants, but is apparently absent other than that. Immediately after they come through, they find out that time works differently and that 2 weeks may have passed in Balinor, but it was like how it had been 15 minutes on the farm, so Laurie could have gone back and been totally fine. But now she's back in Balinor again, and they can't take her back through the gap right now. So they leave the Valley of Fear on the Dawn Treader and sail to a place called Doridia. It's another country kingdom that Entia took over, and it's where the first trial will be. It's like a steeplechase. So the horses run cross country and do jumps and stuff. The unicorns. Excuse me. That's what steeplechases are. It's 3 miles with jumps over fire pits. And they have to win this to win the first challenge. The race happens. Oh, I forgot about this. Finn, we meet, and he's the innkeeper's son in Doridia, and he tries to be friends with Ari, but Ari's really abrasive at this point. It's like, no, I don't have time for friends. I am trying to save my kingdom. And Kylie randomly attacks them briefly in the stall at the inn, but then it's just, it was literally like a paragraph, and then she's gone. The next day is the steeplechase. 3 miles, jumping over fire pits, and the race has the Shadow Rider in it, and he has a mace and is throwing magic at them the whole time they're running, and then Finn appears in the race as well, and he's on Rednall, who's a celestial unicorn as well. Atalanta sent him down to help, and Rednall's also Chase's brother. He's red, if you didn't get that from the name. He leads the Finn and Rednall leave the Shadow Rider away while Chase and Ari win, and then they have to keep running because Shadow Rider just keeps trying to come after them, and they run into another cave that leads out of Deridia before the Shadow Rider tries to kill them or hurt them, I guess, in a middle grade framing, despite having won the first challenge. So they get out with Finn and Rednall and onto a beach, which is the second challenge when the moonlight comes up. So we had the fire of the fire pits, and now we have the moonlight on the beach. And this challenge is to dive by moonlight into this ocean area, and Ari needs to retrieve this rose that fell into the water. And there's deadly mermaids, and the Kraken is chasing her as well. Don't know how it got there, but the Kraken is there. And it doesn't seem like the Rose falls very far, but it's just because this trial happens in the space of a chapter, and the chapter is like 7 pages, so it doesn't give much explanation, but it happens in seconds, and Ari goes after the flower, chased by all these things, and comes back up with it. She's trying to swim. Her legs are seizing up because they're still not fully healed, but then Chase comes out swimming to her and pulls her back to shore. And that was the end of the second challenge. The first challenge was honestly a lot longer in description, and then this one just kind of happens. So Ari, Finn, Chase, and Rednall are able to go through magic back to Balinor somehow. A lot of portaling, and it doesn't exactly line up. And they meet up with the Dawn Treader again, the ship, and Lori, Link, and Toby are at the Dawn Treader. The Scepter tells them after this that the balance of magic has been restored because they completed the challenges. This book seemed like the most rushed so far because it's 2 challenges, which are like bread and butter fantasies, sending a hero out on quests, happening in 95 pages, and it's 2 of them. So next up is book 5. That is Search for the Star. Atalanta, at the beginning of this, sees a vision of Entia moving towards the Blue Mountain, where the Indigo Star is held by Nathan the Dragon. Smaug, basically. We get Entia's first ever POV chapter happens, and he's snatching the jewel from Nathan just before he awakes from a 1,000-year slumber. And Entia's first mission with this star, which is more powerful than the scepter he had stolen from Ari before. His first mission is to destroy Atalanta and the Celestial Herd so that they can't help Chase and Ari anymore, and then he'll finish taking out the royal family of Ari. And how you visualize this in the book is that the star starts taking the colors of the unicorns up in the Celestial Valley, and it starts with the blues and indigos, which involves Atalanta. So Atalanta is turning into like a ghostly unicorn instead of the indigo purple she used to be. And Atalanta is told by the old mare that Ari must merge the scepter with the star. So the old mare kind of gives the quest, and then Atalanta is going to try to give that quest to Ari. Lori and Finn are starting to flirt, and it's cute because it kind of calms Lori in a way. Again, she's like the only one that seems to have a real character arc emotionally. So they're having fun and being cute little teenagers together. Atalanta tries sending a message to Ari about this, but because the star is now interfering and taking the power from the Celestial Unicorn, she's not able to completely send a dream to Ari. And so Ari only gets little pieces, and she doesn't really know what Atalanta says, except to go find Dr. Bones. Back at the Unicorn Inn, we have Runetta, who's Samlet's wife, Samlet the inn owner, and she insists that they need to have a formal ceremony now that the scepter is back and introduce the Princess of Balinor back to the people to kind of improve the people's morale after being controlled by the shifter for the last year. But before that can happen, Entia goes back to the dragon that's now woken up and is angry that his star is gone, and he says, "These humans took the star. I don't know what happened, but I saw these humans come out of your mountain with the star." And this sends Nathan into a rage. And with no other information, even though there's humans in other parts of this whole world, Nathan goes straight to Balinor, to the village where the Unicorn Inn is, and wreaks destruction. He does this whole storm. And the storm is so powerful that it picks Chase up and puts him into the tree, horn first. So Chase is stuck there and they have to hack him out. And there's some other damage to the valley, but that's about all the dragon does. He doesn't use fire. There's nothing else more dangerous in this middle grade world that happens. But the village ends up knowing that because the dragon is flying around, the star is gone. I don't know where they get that knowledge, because this dragon only wakes up once every 1,000 years. But that's what they know. And the next thing that occurs is these dragon slayers named Valona and Armis with their group come to the inn, and they're looking for volunteers to help carry their supplies to Blue Mountain to kill Nathan, since Nathan is awake and a threat to the people. Ari and their whole company volunteer to go because they know the Shifter's castle is nearby. Conveniently, Valley of Fear is next to the Blue Mountain, and Ari wants to be able to sneak off and steal the star from the Shifter. So then we come back to Entia's point of view, and he tasks Kylie with stealing the scepter back. And we don't see Kylie again in this book after being told that. So Ari, Chase, Lincoln break off from this group of dragon slayers to head to the castle, and this time they take food and water. Now, that was weird to me because in the first time they went to Valley of Fear, it was very explicit that when they were crossing the valley that they couldn't have food or water because Entia's influence over this area poisoned things immediately. So they couldn't have food or water. Now they're just taking it. Continuity issue here. So they take food and water in, and Ari disguises herself as a servant, this time instead of a soldier, and she takes a meal to the Shifter. And the Shifter is trying to wear a human form, and he thinks he's not getting it quite right. And Ari convinces him that he'd look better as a human if he took a nap. Vibes. I feel that, Ari. I don't look good when I haven't had my nap. So she convinces him to do that, and she uses a bit of her magic, her scepter magic, to help him get to sleep. And then she steals the star right up from around his neck, because he put it on a necklace. And it immediately melds with the scepter. The Shifter is waking up and screeching, and she's able to escape out the window with the scepter, creating a magical bridge down to the ground, and she runs off. Ari immediately takes the star to Blue Mountain, and she intercepts the dragon, and the dragon slayers are surrounding the dragon, and she gives back the star to Nathan to try to get him to go back to sleep and be good, and she keeps the dragon slayers off by telling them that she's the Princess of Balinor and they need to listen to her. It's the first time she fully reveals herself. So that's how we end that book. We're getting through it. We're on book 6 of 8 now. Book 6 is Secrets of the Scepter. We are going to find out more about the Royal Scepter than we did before. So, again, we're doing the thing with the quest. Give a quest, send the hero on the quest. Atalanta gives Ari a new task. She needs to earn 3 gold rings for her scepter. There's grooves in the scepter that fit the rings, and there's 3 tasks, 1 for each ring. For some reason, and it's not really explained, Ari's just like, yo, we don't have time to take you home right now, Lori, so you're just gonna have to deal. And I think Lori at this point, even though she's complaining about it, is kind of enjoying her life as the princess's companion at this point. So I don't know. It's just funny that they decide that she can't go across the gap, even though it takes moments in every time that they've portaled across. And there's no magical barrier right now they can go through. But, I mean, sorry, Lori. We don't have time for you. Anyway, the lords of Balinor show up at the inn, the remaining ones. There used to be 7 before the fall, and only 3 of them remain loyal to the royal family. The other 4 either are gone or are loyal to Entia the Shifter. So Lord Rexler is one of them, and he's the most ornery and grumpy old man ever. But he honestly asks really good questions, because he's like, who is this kid that says she's the Princess of Balinor? How do we prove that this is who she says she is, when the evil entity that we're fighting against is a literal shapeshifter? Good questions, Lord Rexler. Like, everybody finds him annoying, but I was like, dude, good job. Not just accepting that this 12-year-old girl is who she says she is. The lords tell Ari that they will start gathering their army, all their little contingents from their lands together. But while they do that, Ari needs to go to Dr. Bones, because Dr. Bones is the only one they trust as the princess's nurse, and get a signed certificate, a notarized certificate, basically, saying that Ari is who she says she is. And I don't know how they expect to know that this was Dr. Bones signing this certificate. They're not getting Dr. Bones in person. They're just asking for a piece of paper that's signed. Easily forgeable, but beside the point. So that's what Ari's going to do. If she doesn't come back with it, then they're going to just take their armies and go. Then we get a scene with the shifter again, Entia, and he's apparently controlled by the Shadow Rider. The Shadow Rider actually controls Entia, and Entia is begging for more time to get the scepter back. But the Shadow Rider kind of shuts Entia down and is like, you're going to do this real fast, or it's the end for you. So it kind of makes Entia seem less evil and less of a threat, if that makes sense, because the Shadow Rider himself hasn't been a threat to anybody really yet. So it was really interesting. Ari, Lori, Tobiano, Chase, Lincoln, the group, the gang, they go off to find Dr. Bones and get this signed certificate. And they're going through the forest and they come across 2 baby unicorns. And it's the first time Lori is actually nice to anybody. She is so excited about these 2 little unicorns, and it's so cute. I feel like Lori is probably my favorite character in this series because she's the only full character. They are wild unicorns that they believe were abandoned, and they're just sitting there crying, and Lori's so sad about them. And they bring them on their little journey through the forest. The next day, they stumble into a centaur argument, and Ari, as a 12-year-old girl, convinces them to let her be the mediator as the Princess of Balinor, and she mediates their argument and comes to an agreement with them, and she earns a gold ring from the centaurs when she ends up appeasing both sides. So that was her first trial to get 1 of 3 rings. Then we have Kylie back, and she's a slave in Entia's pit in the Valley of Fear. Entia gives her 1 more shot to get the scepter back. If you remember, at the beginning of the last book, he told her to get the scepter back, and we never saw her again. Here she is again, having failed. I don't even know she tried. And she's getting 1 more shot to get the scepter. I don't know. It's just so weird. Entia, this evil being, giving this woman so many shots at getting at this one task. Anyway, then we cut back to the crew in the forest, and they are debating. They feel like they need to leave the babies behind if they can't find the mom before they leave the forest, because they can't take them on this journey. And so they decide to camp 1 more night to see if they can find the Wild One's mom, and they hear her calls in the middle of the night, her cries. And it ends up that the baby's mama is the queen of the Wild Ones, Queen Orion, and she left her children behind she left her children behind because her mate, King Timberland, dishonored the whole herd of wild ones by turning into a shadow unicorn and working with Entia. So she felt that because her children were the offspring of this turncoat, that she had to abandon them in the forest. Pretty dark and sad. And she still feels terrible and that she wants her children, but she's telling them, you have to take these children away. And Ari ends up convincing her to take them back, and she had one of the gold rings for the scepter on at the base of her horn, and Ari takes it off after she convinces her and moves on her way with 2 of the 3 rings for her scepter. Now they come to a little village called Angel Cane, and that's where Dr. Bones is now holing up, and she is very sick, presumably dying, but they don't outright say that because this is middle grade. And Ari wants to stay and nurse her back to health the way that Dr. Bones has helped her in the past. But the doctor gives her the final gold ring and says, Ari, your task to earn this ring is to leave right now and go save your kingdom. You need to put your kingdom above me and your personal feelings. And it was kind of sad. So Ari leaves her. Ari leaves Dr. Bones in this quiet little village, very sick. And that's the end of book 6. Ooh, all right. Throat's getting dry. Okay, now we're on Night of the Shifter's Moon, book 6. Unicorn types are explained for the very first time in this first chapter of this book. There are worker unicorns, royal unicorns. Those live in Balinor. Workers are just the day-to-day unicorns that help pull carriages and work in the fields. The royal unicorns are unicorns like Chase, but Chase is also kind of celestial, but they call him a royal unicorn a lot. The royal unicorns live in the royal palace, or lived at the time before Entia took over. Then there's the wild ones who live in the forests and aren't part of any group, and the celestial unicorns. So we just randomly, in book 7 of 8, get this breakdown of the types of unicorns. The gang, heads towards the Lake of the Path of the Moon. It's quite a mouthful. And Ari and Chase end up in the Celestial Valley. When they get there, they bed down for the night at the lake, and they end up going up into the sky to the Celestial Valley, and they do their official ceremony of bonding with the Celestial Unicorns between themselves and the scepter. And that gives Ari, it invests Ari with the royal magic as the women before her had done for them. And it kind of establishes this matriarchal power magical line. While there, Atalanta tells Ari and Chase that the shifter has his own watching bowl and can see them. These are Palantirs at this point, but it will shatter and protect them for a time. She just knows that his is going to shatter. So she tells him about it, and then she's like, don't worry, it's going to break. I don't know what the purpose of this was. Toby and Rednall are still hanging out with the group, and Atalanta warns Ari and Chase that they need to return to the Celestial Valley soon because they're going to lose their immortality if they stay down in Balinor for too long. So it's kind of a, hurry up, Ari, figure this out. We need our unicorns back. Then they come down from the sky, and shifter forces are battling at the lake with Toby, Rednall, Lori, and Link. They're all battling these shifter shadows, and Ari uses the scepter to light the dark, and the shifter minions shrink away. But this is weird to me because Entia lives in a desert, and fire is everywhere. So I don't know why the shifters' forces are suddenly afraid of the dark. Or afraid of the light, excuse me. They defeat them. It's all good. 3 humans and 3 unicorns and a dog then decide to storm the royal castle and take it back from the shifters' forces. That's all they have. They're like, we don't have time to go back to the Unicorn Inn and gather the forces that we went all the way to Angel Cane to get a certificate of identity for Ari to get these forces from the lords. We don't have time to do that. We don't have time to go back. So it's going to be 3 horses or 3 unicorns, 3 humans, and a dog taking on the royal castle and taking it back. But they do, good thinking on somebody's part, they do inspire the townsfolk in the area around the royal castle to fight and help storm it. And then, instead of seeing the storming of the castle, we skip to Lady Kylie and Entia watching the storming of the castle from the watching bowl. And that's all we get of it. We don't get this epic moment of taking back Ari's castle. It really sucks. The shifter, at this point, I don't know why he's letting Kylie watch the bowl, because he's immediately thinking, I want this woman imprisoned. She's not doing anything that I need her to do. She hasn't gotten the scepter twice. 3 times, something like that. And before he can get her imprisoned at this point, the Shadow Rider comes in and threatens Entia again. And he reveals his own shifting magic, the Shadow Rider, and you find out that the Shadow Rider is actually the Kraken that was in the moat at the royal castle, the Kraken that chased Ari in the ocean in the trial by moonlight. That's who the Shadow Rider is, and he's also a shifter. It's so weird. It's more like Morgoth and Sauron at this point. I don't know. The Kraken is a deep magic being, and Kraken tells Entia that Entia has to win, like, soon. So then we snap back to the gang, and they are in the castle. The Shifter's forces left the castle like a mess, except for Ari's room. Ari's room's perfect. I don't know. Ari gives the Lords Dr. Bones' certificate, and they finally start planning how to take down the Shifter, and they have to do it on the Shifter's moon, a new moon where it's dark, in 2 weeks. Finn at this round table gives another unicorn type breakdown to Lori because Lori asks, and I don't know why we get 2 of them in the same book. And Lori's excited because she's just been named as a lady's maid, a lady in waiting for Ari. And she's like, I get a dress allowance, right? And that's all she cares about for the rest of this series, pretty much. So then the Kraken in that last scene broke the watching bowl. So now we're back to Entia again, and he sends Lady Kylie as a spy to the castle, even though everybody at the castle knows who she is at this point, and that she's already failed Entia multiple times. She's been sent on a spying mission, and he instructs her to also poison the Sunchaser. Lori hires Lady Kylie as the new lady in waiting. Because somehow she used a veil. She used a veil to hide her face, and nobody asked her to lift her veil at all. And Lori just hires her on site to be a lady in waiting as well and fill out Ari's, because Ari only wants 2. That's all she cares about. And she doesn't even care to have that many. She just acquiesces to the Lord's wishes that she have some sort of royal functioning group. But Ari and Chase are like, whatever. Do what you want. We're going on our own little quest. But Lady Kylie is able to sneak her little poison into the feed bag before they move off. And Ari and Chase are going to find the royal unicorns that are missing. They're going to start with the Isle of Unicorns, and the Isle is 6 days away. Now, they leave the day pretty much that the round table happened. They have 14 days till the Shifter's moon. They leave on a trip that's going to take 12 days, and they only have 2 days to find the unicorns at the Isle of Unicorns, if they're even there. But we're going to do this. So, they travel to the Isle of Unicorns, and then they come across a man with a boat whose name is Captain Betlet. So we've had Samlet, who owns the inn. We've had Tomlet, who's related to Samlet, who ended up being an agent of Entia. And then we have Betlet. But Betlet doesn't have any known ties to either of them. It's just really funny how these side characters are being named. I enjoyed it. Captain Betlet owns the fishing boat that's called the Moon. And he immediately starts quizzing Ari on the royal unicorns, like, oh, who's this royal unicorn? Who's this? And Ari remembers now because she has the scepter all fully decked out with the rings. And once he trusts her that she's who she says she is, she's been questioned again on her identity, basically. He shows Ari to where the royal unicorns have been hiding. And immediately, Ari puts her feed and lets the royal unicorns eat from it. And one of the royal unicorns, who was it? Puzzler eats the piece of poison and almost dies. But Ari happens to have a potion from Dr. Bones and saves Puzzler. It was super wild, and I'm surprised that the royal unicorns trusted Ari after this point. But they ended up coming back with them, with Ari and Chase, and on their way back, Ari calls to the celestial unicorns above to join a battle because they come over the ridge and they see that the shifter has decided to already attack. Oh, I skipped a part. In the castle, Lady Kylian is becoming suspicious to everybody. They're like, who is this woman? And then she suddenly reveals herself at the dinner table and she's like, my master is coming. And Entia comes. And he comes like a whole day early to surprise attack them since Chase and Ari are gone. And Chase and Ari come up over the hill and see that the shifter's forces are attacking the royal castle, and she calls down the celestial unicorns to come help into the battle. And in a paragraph, the celestial unicorns overtake the whole place and battle Entia, and Chase gets in there. The Sunchaser is battling, and that happens in about a paragraph, and then the battle's over. It was basically the Rohirrim coming with Gandalf at the same time that the ghost forces, that Aragorn calls on, come down and sweep the whole battlefield. It was done. It was over in seconds. I blinked and the chapter was over. When they defeated Entia, the Valley of Fear collapsed and Entia's castle destroys itself, and it frees Entia's slaves. But then, cliffhanger, in the pit, capital P, of the valley, the Kraken bursts through the wreckage once more, determined to keep fighting. So that is book 7. And now we have book 8, which is Shadows over Balinor. This one starts with a comet flying over Balinor, warning Atalanta that the Kraken is coming. Ari is not going to be able to use her scepter, or it will empower the Kraken. But Atalanta can't easily warn Ari of that. And I don't know why. They don't explain why. They don't explain if there's some sort of block on the magic at this point. It's just that Atalanta can't do it for some random reason. Then we jump to a chapter about a random cat named Odie coming out of the stables and kind of slinking through with the unicorns, the royal unicorns. It was cute. But then Odie meets Ari in the chapter after that, and Ari heals little Odie. Odie's a little kitten, and finds a message in Odie's collar that says he must be stopped, and they don't know who it comes from. And then we find out that Rednall and Tobiano did go back to the Celestial Valley to keep their immortality after the battle, and Lady Kylie is a prisoner in the royal castle, is a prisoner of Ari. Odie tells them who gave the message, and that it was this random person that worked for the Archon, his name is Archon, and he is the archivist, the royal archivist who ran off when the shifter took over the royal castle, and he took all of the things that he could to preserve any sort of history for Balinor. And the scepter, at this point, the scepter does more than answer questions. It talks on its own now because it's in full power, and it wants Ari to stay home. It's like, you need to send somebody else. You need to delegate, because there's danger afoot if you go out to this archivist dude. But Ari's like, no, I'm going. This is my thing. And Ari uses the excuse to the lords to explain why she needs to leave her castle immediately after retaking it. That she needs to get Lori home. So presumably we're taking Lori home to leave Balinor. Atalanta appears to Odie as they're about to leave, and in a dream state, and then gives a dream to Ari and tells her to leave the scepter behind. Oh, they'd already left. They were one night in, but they were already on the road. And Ari is like, she wakes up and she knows that she got this message, but she's like, oh, but I just need to do one more thing. I need this scepter to write me a message to the lords. And I don't remember why it was so important, but she needed this message. It was ChatGPT in her hand, and that she needed to write this message. And immediately, Moloch, the shadow unicorn, Moloch, I think it's Moloch, the shadow unicorn. He's a crow now. He's a giant shadow crow, and he's waiting for the Kraken and to gather the shadow unicorns. But as soon as Ari uses the scepter, he's on her. He feels that magic being used, and the scepter stops working immediately when Ari tries to do this, to try to protect itself. And they say that it's the old mare, the oldest unicorn, protecting the deep magic. So Ari goes on without the scepter working, and the group reaches 610, which they go on the Dawn Treader again to go to 610, and they're lured by a crow, or Moloch crow, into an alley. And Ari and Odie are captured in that alley and thrown into a warehouse. Odie is able to get away from the warehouse and lead all the rest to Ari. So Ari is captured for all of 2 pages. And immediately after that, Ari gets another dream warning to not use his scepter. And this is after Atalanta at the beginning of the book says, I can't warn Ari, but she's warned her twice now in dreams. So we have Captain Treadwell and the Dawnbreaker taking the group to Demon View, which is at the base of the Valley of Fear. And they immediately, after disembarking, run into Archon. And he brings them into his home, which is stacked with all the things that he saved from the castle. He also knows Lincoln, but he calls Lincoln Gully. And nobody knows why. And Archon leads Chase and Ari to the Gap doors. The Gap is like part of Archon's house somehow, with Gully, Lincoln. And he reveals Lincoln to be the link between worlds. So the only reason they've been able to get through the Gap all of these times is because Lincoln is the magic to get through. It's not been the scepter or anything else that Ari thought. So Gully, he opens the door to a place called Bloom, where magic is still safe to use. And when they get into there, Gully, Lincoln, turns into a frog, which is apparently his original form. And Ari looks into this magic orb and sees the comet coming to the Valley of Fear to power up the Kraken. And she's like, "Oh crap, we gotta go. We gotta fix this." Gully takes them through a shortcut in the Gap, still as a frog, and they make it to the pit. And Chase fights Moloch, while Ari uses the scepter to push the comet off course. Wild. 12-year-old using scepter magic to push a comet off course from hitting a Kraken in the ground. The hand that has been reaching from the pit disintegrates when she does that. It's like had been reaching for the power, and then the power's gone, so it loses all of its effort. And Chase and Moloch stop fighting, and Ari's like, just let him go. And they just let the shadow unicorn that had been loyal to Entia go. And Atalanta congratulates them after they've done this, and Gully, Lincoln, is returned to being a dog, but he doesn't have power as the link between worlds anymore. So they have to find a new link. And Lori, because there is no link between worlds anymore, doesn't have to leave Balinor. She can stay until a new one is established. And at this point, maybe 45 minutes has passed in her world, even though it's been like over a month over this whole series that she's been gone in Balinor. So Lori just gets to be a lady in waiting and live her dreams as in a royal castle. That's where book 8 ends. That's where the whole story ends. Now, throughout this whole thing, we had been getting dropped that Entia had taken Ari's family. Ari's mother and father are still alive somewhere, and her brother is still alive somewhere. Nobody knows where. We never got a chance to go find them. So I looked this up after finishing book 8. And we never got another book because Mary Stanton's contract ended with Scholastic. And after that, she didn't want to write anymore. So it kind of sucked. We don't get a resolution there. And I searched on Google to find anything from Mary Stanton because her website doesn't work anymore. The domain is up for sale. And I did find that she had an active Facebook up until 2013. 2013 is the last time she posted. And in 2013, she did post this long kind of summary of things that she's working on. And one thing that she said she wanted to work on in 2013, which would have been 13 years after the 8th book was dropped, that she wanted to put out a short story that resolved Ari getting her family back. And I looked for it and I can't find it. I don't know if it existed on the website before or anything, but Mary Stanton is also now in her 80s. She would have been in 2013 in her 70s, maybe or late 60s at that point. So I don't think that we're going to get a full resolution. And I also don't think book 8 ever needed to happen. I don't think we needed to have the Kraken at all and this power, but that was her contract with Scholastic. That's how books work in a lot of ways. And so that's where we end. And we just have to, in our minds, imagine that Ari gets her family back, have no idea where they were hiding if they weren't in the Valley of Fear with the Shifter. No clue where that was going to go. But that is what we have, and that's what we know. This series was so foundational for me. It is a series that I carried around with me. I had those physical paperbacks through college, but then I lost a couple of them because I moved so many times when you're in college. And so I don't have them anymore. But I did carry them for like 20 years. And I have unicorns everywhere. Like my mom had a unicorn collection of statues, little figures, and I still have a lot of them. I don't have nearly as many because moving again breaks unicorn horns and hooves and stuff. So I only have so many of them still existing, but I do have quite a number of the ones my mom gave me. And then I also have a bunch of unicorns from the My Little Pony series that were my mom's too, because they released a bunch of the unicorns. A bunch of My Little Pony unicorns at the time that she was younger. So I have a lot of that stuff, and I was always a unicorn horse girl. I watched the Saddle Club. Anybody else watch the Saddle Club? I watched the Saddle Club as a kid growing up, and so this was like really a foundational part of my growing up with fantasy, and that's why I chose it as my first video for my origin stories series. And I think next I'm probably going to read Into the Land of the Unicorns by Bruce Coville, or reread, I should say. And just a little preview, I found out recently, I only had 2 of the books as a kid. I found out that there have been 2 more books that came out at least 10 years after the second one did. So that's very exciting. I'm going to read all 4 of them. I saw that Libby has them from my library on audio, so I'm going to do those next for my next origin stories video. If you've read Unicorns of Balinor and have just been excited to jam with me and remember what this series was about, let me know in the comments. It was a great story to reread and kind of laugh at how silly some of the moments were, but it definitely had a lot of the pieces that brought me into my fantasy worlds now. And I appreciate you sitting and watching and enjoying the Unicorns of Balinor with me. And I will catch you next time. Bye.